So H2OpenDoors is a project I started 11 years ago in the Bay Area Rotary clubs back in 2012, I guess. And within the first month of my being a Rotarian, I went to the Thailand Rotary International, in Bangkok, the international convention. And I wanted to do water. I joined Rotary to do water. I wanted to disrupt the way Rotary was doing water. Previous to my joining Rotary, I was, oddly, the largest contributor to a company, an organization that is now known as water.org, but it used to be Water Partners. This is before Matt Damon came in. When Matt Damon came in, he said, I'm not going to go to the bathroom until every human being on the planet has access to a toilet. So everybody said, Matt Damon's not going to the bathroom. Let's send them money, right? So millions of dollars went to Water Partners. But at the time, before that, I was the largest contributor. Weird. Anyway, I had made this large contribution, and I have a marketing company, or I just retired from it, but I had a marketing company in the Silicon Valley. So I'm reading all their brochures. They were based in Oakland. And I was furious because what the brochure was saying was, last year we put 1,000 wells in Kenya. This year we're going to put 1,000 wells in Ghana, so send us money. And I was furious about this. And I called the board together, and 3 people showed up, which is great. They only have five members, so that was good. And I said, you can't be saying this. And they said, why? I said, because what you should be saying is, last year we put 1,000 wells in Kenya, and this year we're going to go back and fix the 40 to 60% that are inoperable. Because that's the truth with pumps and wells. At any given time, 40 to 60% are inoperable for a lot of different reasons. Water table shifts, a cotter pin is missing from the hand pump. The whole concept of the way water is being done is really whack. It's really ridiculous. Because you put in a pump in a well, and then the women walk 5 miles with 40 pounds of water on their backs. So what did you really accomplish with that? And when I joined Rotary and I went to the RI convention, what was WASRAG pitching? The life straw. This is a gadget for camping where, I have this picture in my office where it's a grandmother in Kenya stooping into a river, sucking river water through this life straw, right? And this was like really being promoted by WASRAG. And I said, wow, Rotary was not much better at that time, not much better than every other NGO. And of course, the largest NGO today in the water space, their logo is the yellow jerry can. Now, to me, when I see the yellow jerry can, I just say, that's just a big fat failure. Because what that means is you're going to a well, you're forcing the women to go carry these jerry cans, fill it up at a hand pump or something, it's unfiltered, untreated, and bring it back all day long back to their village. So this is not what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do with H2OpenDoors, and we've been doing this for 11 years, and I brought 550 Rotarians and friends on expeditions all over the world, is do it a completely different way. And do it in a way in which it provides dignity at the same time that it provides safe drinking water, and the opportunity, this is the open doors part of H2OpenDoors, provide the opportunity in some cases to actually create an enterprise of selling the water. Because, if anybody's been to the Masai Mara or places like that, or Guatemala, the big income for these villages is the handicrafts that, again, the women are doing. So the support that they're getting is by making beautiful handicraft work, beadwork and so on, and selling that. So water is something that not everybody just wants, they need it. So this provides an opportunity, and I'll show you in a lot of cases, this is about $300,000 per year of income for these villages to move them towards the position of being self-reliant. So that's what H2OpenDoors is about. And it is a donor-advised fund at the Rotary Foundation. And it is, although it is just completely reliant on philanthropy, as we are in Rotary. So I'm kind of this Don Quixote character. My theme song is that song, I've been everywhere, man, I've been everywhere. And I started to get, when we started when we got sent to our rooms by Mother Nature a couple years ago, I started to get despondent because I just couldn't scale this up. The need is so great that I couldn't scale it up in Rotary, and I realized that that's because it's a philanthropy-only organization. And when you research philanthropy in general in the United States, it's on a downward slope. Where it's flat, where it hasn't changed, is in family foundations and trusts. Why? It's always been 5%. 5% is always steady. Because if you don't contribute 5% of your assets and you're a family foundation, you lose your tax exemption. So it's never 6%. It's never 4%. It's always 5%. So that's what's been floating the rates of philanthropy. Rotary Foundation included. So I began to think about, where's all the money? Well, the money is locked in capitalism. For every $1 of donor dollar that we're chasing for flight, and we're chasing for all these other things, and we're competing with other NGOs and the Lions and Kiwanis and all these other organizations, there's thousands of dollars available in investment, impact investment. So this is opposite thinking. And I can't play the video, but if I was to play this video, this is a scene out of Seinfeld about opposite. George realizes that he's stuck, and so Jerry convinces him he should do the opposite, whatever he's doing. So he's sitting at the table, and he's ordering his typical tuna fish sandwich. And he says, you know what? No, I'm going to do the opposite. So he orders a chicken sandwich. And Jerry says, you know, chicken isn't really the opposite of tuna. The opposite of tuna would be salmon. So order a salmon, because salmon, you know, they go upstream. Do the opposite. It's a hilarious scene. As you can tell, you know, you're all cracking up right now. But, you know, we got to start thinking out of the box in Rotary. With limited resources in philanthropy only, we need to be doing something else. We need to feather in some other opportunities. So, what am I doing wrong? Oh, down? No, up? Do the opposite. Maybe you could get me going with it. Yeah. Oh, is that the up arrow? Okay, start there. I still can't. Okay, yeah, that's working. Okay, so I wrote this book, and it's available on Amazon and Audible. I don't read the book on Audible. You don't want to hear this voice for 4 hours. Trust me. So we got an actor to read it. But it's about the experiences on these expeditions. And it's a view of Rotary and Rotary projects, international projects, and the epiphanies that you get when you go on an international project. How many people have been on a Rotary international project? Wow. Okay, we're going to get busy this year and next year with opportunities. I've got about 12 projects lined up. My next project is next week, if you want to come. We're going to the Philippines. Got 7 people going on that. Right after that, we're going to, in April, we're going to Liberia, Ethiopia, and South Sudan on the same trip. We go to Guatemala a lot. All over the world we go. These are opportunities for Rotary members to experience an international project. It's a curated event. We usually have a 3-ring circus. And most of the time I'm taking 25 to 30 people, and we divide into 3 groups. One group is the water group. If we have more than about 6 or 7 people, that job, which would take us an hour, a day and a half, would take us 5 days because you're answering too many questions. So we have another group, which is the Eyeglass readers group. We get thousands of Eyeglass readers, basically donated from Foster Grant. And we do eyeglass fittings, which is probably the most wonderful experience that you'll ever have, is giving people, and a lot of these places, they didn't even know they have an eye problem, and you give them these readers, and they see, you know, they can see again, they can read, they can be so much more productive. And then the third group in many cases is what's called RACHEL, remote access to community hotspot education and learning. Where you don't have internet, we can get these servers out of a group called World Possible in San Diego that's about the size of a pizza box. It's 1 terabyte, and loaded onto this server is all of Wikipedia, all of the great books, all of the Khan Academy in dual language, English and Hindi, English and Spanish, English and whatever, wherever we're going. And this server sets up its own Wi-Fi to up to 100 devices to an area the size of this ballroom. So it's perfect to set up a computer lab. So we spend time, that group within our expedition spends time in teaching the teachers on how to use internet content and teach classes using the internet for the first time ever. What happens when we do that is it also sets up a night school for the adults, which is really, really cool. Okay, so the impact investment group that we started is called Global Water First. Most of the investors are Rotarians. We're in our seed round now, but this provides a way in which we can get a lot more capital to do a lot more projects. And the reason why I'm showing you both ways to go is going to start to make sense as I go through this. I'm also a steward of the Council for Inclusive Capitalism with the Vatican. And this is, I think, as far as I know, I'm the only Rotarian representative on this council. It's about 160 people. I serve with people like the chairman of the board. This is really ridiculous. The executive chairman of Bank of America, of Wells Fargo, the executive chairman of Exxon, of BP. I mean, just, it's this weird thing. Well, why am I on this council? Why did they ask me to join it? Because our commitment in Global Water First is by year 5 to have 1,000 water enterprises run by the poor in place throughout the world. That's our commitment. And all these companies make a commitment. Bank of America's commitment is to be 100% paperless by the year 2025. That's their commitment. And these are all commitments in service of the 17 sustainability goals, you know, the UN, the SDGs, right? So our approach is to do, so our impact is of relevance compared to all of these other companies. So it's really an exciting opportunity. You will hear more about inclusive capitalism starting next year when the first meetings begin at the Vatican. This was started, and the people that are at the top of this council is Lynn Rothschild of the Rothschild family and her friend Francis, who we know as Pope Francis. And those two started this council. And so you're going to hear a lot about this. And I love this term, inclusive capitalism, right? I mean, the more that starts to go through my head, the more I'm thinking, this is where Rotary is uniquely qualified. We started as a business roundtable, basically, right? Inclusive capitalism is where we should be getting our money. Donor dollars are great, but it's not becoming sustainable to keep what we want to do going. So, if you were to go to inclusivecapital.com and put in my name, you'll see my profile there. And somehow my teeth are white, thanks for Photoshop. Okay, so this is what Global Water First is doing, where we want to put in villages that can foment self-reliance. So a village of smart water and power. A lot of places where I go where they're water stressed, they're also power stressed, most of the places that I go. If they get grid power, they're getting it maybe an hour a day. And that's at the expense of also having a diesel generator when they don't have that grid power. You cannot hope to get self-reliant villages unless you have power, because you can't start enterprises within that village without power. You can't even have a farm. You need power for the pumps, right? So this is what our villages look like. And for right now, the way the pricing is going, both for water provision and solar power and renewable power, the price to do this is going way, way down. I mean, we're quoting on a village for 500 people in the Naka Valley refugee settlement of Uganda. It's $200,000 to set it all up as a nanogrid, a managed nanogrid, including water. So, the pricing is going really, really down to become affordable. I'm also a member of the working group of the IEEE and their Smart Village working group. I love their tagline, power a village, empower community. And the idea is to create opportunities. It's called Global Water First because we start with water. Before we do anything, we start with water. This is the triage, but it also, when you're setting up these enterprises, provides, as I said before, about as much as $300,000 a year, which is transformational money for this village. Whether it be projects that we've done like this, which was in Lamu, Kenya, we prefer to have it staffed and run and then eventually owned by women. That's what we prefer, for a lot of different reasons. They've carried the burden, but also they're cooperative. Us guys, man, we're kind of competitive, right? I mean, you got to admit. So we need cooperation, and these are really, so far, fundamentally very, very lucrative businesses. This is in Nepal. And Rotary has 35,000 clubs in every country. And we try, when we install these systems, we try to cluster as much as possible. So we've got 3 systems in Nepal. This gentleman is Narayan. He actually lives in Boulder. And he's built a hospital and schools in Nepal. So we've got 3 systems, and this is one that we were putting in at one of the schools that he built. What Rotary and Rotary Club's role in all this, it's very powerful. I call it the 3 M's. And the 3 M's are, and this is what we're best at, and also partner clubs are best at. We're best at mentoring, because a lot of us come from the business community or from academia. We know how to organize, we know how to administrate, we know how to oversee, right? We know how to give direction. We know how to teach people. The second M is monitoring. Like I said, we're good at oversight. So mentoring, monitoring, in other words, the proper use of the equipment, the sustainability of the program, and so on. Rotarians are very, very good at this. And then the third is microfinance. We become, since Muhammad Yunus invented the concept of microfinance, Rotary is coming along, doing pretty good. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't call us Grameen Bank. That's the gold standard. But we're getting better and better and better at it. So that's what we can provide as Rotarians to these projects. In Guatemala, last month, we finished our second trip where we converted a hospital that does 11,000 births a month. Wait, I'm sorry. Somebody get a calculator. They do 45 births a day. So maybe that's 11,000 or 15,000 a year. Anyway, it's a lot of births. And the 45 births a day, remember, are from teenagers, right? And these teenagers have the problem of being malnutrition, suffering from malnutrition. So the babies always wind up in the NICU and the PICU. So I was at the Hamburg Rotary International Convention. I always display what we're doing at the RI conventions. And the Minnesota clubs who've been supporting this hospital for a long time came through and they said, this is in 2019, the last in-person Rotary International Convention, and they said 7 children in the NICU and the PICU are dying every month, and they don't know why. And it turns out that it's because a septic system that serves the whole community ruptured. So E. coli and waste is coming into their well, and that's the water that they were using for the hospital. So we got there about 3 months later. We installed a SunSpring system made in Rocky Ford, Colorado, on the roof, and that was 2 years ago, right before we went into our bunkers in January. And we solved the problem for the 3rd floor, the pediatrics, NICU, PICU. Been no deaths since. Last month, we went back and we did the 2nd and the 1st floor, which is the kitchen. It's where they wash the nipples on the baby bottles, all with contaminated water, right? Because you can't fix the septic system, right? So we have to purify the water. So now the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st floor, the entire hospital is purified water from equipment made in Rocky Ford, Colorado. That's the hospital team there. This is the Sunspring on the roof of the hospital. And that's on the roof of a hospital in Nepal, in Kathmandu. Another configuration is something called the wall spring, where we take the components that's in the Sunspring. Now the components, the most important component is this right here, this cylinder. That's a membrane cylinder. It's got 5 miles of membrane. It's got 5 miles of angel hair pasta. And this angel hair pasta is hollow all the way through. And along the sides are 1 billion pores. And these pores are smaller than a bacteria, a virus, a cyst. So as the system pressurizes the source water, a lake, a river, a well, municipal water, it pushes all this water through these membranes. And the bacteria, the viruses, these particulates gather on the outside of the membrane, and the pure water gets through and comes out the hollow ends. That's the purification system. This system, the Sunspring system, will do 20,000 liters a day, which is 1,000 of these bottles, these 20-liter bottles here. This system, in this configuration, will double that. It'll do 40,000 liters a day. Also, the advantage of that system is you can daisy chain. So now you see there's 2 systems daisy chained together. So this will do 80,000 liters a day. And then you can keep going from there. So we can scale this up for small towns. Made in Rocky Ford, Colorado. So the 17 sustainability goals, that's a lot to do. You know, we've got 7 areas of focus in Rotary, right? The UN has 17 goals. This is a lot to do, right? But we feel, with the H2OpenDoors project and Global Water First, that if you create a flywheel on these 17 goals, so in other words, if you take number 6, which is clean water and sanitation, and you combine it with decent work and economic growth, if you create clean water enterprises that are run by the poor, mostly women, if you do that, you can start to imagine those 17 goals being ticked off, right? You're solving a lot of these problems. Disease prevention, maternal health, on and on and on and on. When you add number 7, so 6, 7, and 8, number 7 is robust power for all by the year 2030. When you combine 6, 7, and 8, all 17 goals, when you think about it, get solved with one project. Why is this important? Because if you get involved with this, you don't have to wait in line when you're at the pearly gates. It's like the emerald, you know, it's like you're in the diamond class as opposed to the soil class. I travel economy. I'm usually in soil, you know, where they're calling platinum and diamond and everything. I'm in soil, you know, and I got to wait. And then they throw me peanuts, you know. No. You get special treatment when you can do this kind of work. In the Masai Mara, the women run a water bottling operation that sells water in these bottles to other places in the, other base camps in the Mara. This is 5 women that hire the men to help with the distribution. You got to love that. It's the sweet revenge of water. And so this is the end product. It gets distributed. So instead of women walking with water on their back, they can stay at their village, participate, start businesses, care for their kids. They're not gone all day. You know, I'm on another thing about human trafficking, another commission on human trafficking. And the women are extraordinarily vulnerable when they're out gathering water. Typically, the typical thing is some guy comes by on a motorcycle. Hey, I'll give you a ride. You're just going to the water point? Yeah, I'm going to the ride. And then when they get there, oh, by the way, that was in exchange for sex. You know, this happens all the time. So our focus is water and sanitation, clean, green energy, SME development, which is small to medium enterprises. We want to develop these enterprises to foment self-reliance as opposed to just giving and giving and giving. Every time I go to a village, I'm handed a punch list. Can Rotary raise the money for this? And I want to be able to put in an ATM called a water system. You know, what? You know, you can make your own money right there. And we focus pretty much on rural development and infrastructure as opposed to the urban areas. There's been improvement in the Millennial Goals, if you recall, 2000 to 2015, when that happened. At that time, the metric, for instance, one of the metrics most troubling was that 4,000 children under the age of 5 were dying of diarrheal disease because of water. The Millennial Goals did cut that in half, and most of the Millennial Goals. But now it's 1,800. 1,800 children every day, today, tomorrow, yesterday, will die of diarrheal disease. And before COVID existed, this last COVID round, the World Health Organization said that half of the hospital beds in the entire world were taken up by people with waterborne disease. So this is a very serious issue, and it gets solved. It's one of those 17 goals, right? The UN goals that get solved. So all that improvement, by the way, was in the urban areas. None of it was in the rural areas. So in the rural areas, they're moving kind of backwards. This is the kind of scene that we see all the time. This is in the Naka Valley and refugee settlement in Uganda. They're getting lake water, and it's a water point, and this is their water technology, and we replaced that. This was in Uganda, and right next to this scene where they're getting, this was Engineers Without Borders that put in basically they're just capturing water runoff, and it's in a 24-hour pipe, and people bring, it's untreated, and people bring their jerry cans literally 24 hours a day to fill that up. Well, right next to that was our borehole operation going on. This is my tech team in Uganda, and it was digging a borehole, and we were going down 600 feet. Now, the water was still contaminated, but what this does is it provided us to be able to build this water plant. This is our typical water plant. This is what we replaced those previous scenes with. We build a building. In this case, we have solar panels on the building. In the case where we had a borehole, we needed solar panels because it's a submersible solar pump, always keeping the tanks full with raw water. And then we draw, as we're filling up these bottles in the bottling room, we fill up these pre-sanitized bottles, and that draws the water from the tanks through the sun spring, in that case, or the wall spring, this other equipment made in Rocky Fort. And that creates this system. So this is the actual system. The borehole's behind the building, but this is a completely solar and wind water purification plant that does 40,000 liters a day. And this is located at a place called City, which is a vocational university in Uganda, outside of Kampala, about an hour outside of Kampala. And it's called City, C-I-D-I. I forget what C-I-D-I stands for. But they now have a water brand, and their water brand is City Water. And they distribute that, throughout the area at less than the going rate in Kampala. So the water is less expensive, more affordable. The sweet spot seems to be about 7 to 9 cents a liter, and that becomes affordable for the poor. And all the money that's raised from this goes back to City, in this case, for all their wraparound charitable work that they do, that otherwise they would be trying to collect philanthropy for. That's what that gives you an idea of the size of the sun spring with the door open. Another one that we did was in South Sudan. You ever hear of the Lost Boys of South Sudan? Do you remember that? 20,000 refugees. This is water that one of the refugees named Manyang Kerr, who's now a member of the Rotary Club for Global Action, which is cool. When he was 3 years old, saw his parents get killed in the Civil War, walked until he was 5 to Ethiopia, to Gambela, where there's a refugee settlement. So it took him 2 years to walk there. Many of them were barefoot, by the way. And when he got there, he was saved by this refugee settlement. The geo-coordinates for this refugee settlement is 7 north, 34 east. So fast forward, he was selected with about 4,000 other of the boys to come to the U.S. and were put into high schools when they reached 17, Kansas, Virginia, everywhere. And now he's 30, and he started a coffee company called 734 Coffee, where he gets coffee from Ethiopia, he sends it to Richmond, Virginia, he has it roasted, and he sells it, 734 Coffee, and it's really good. You could buy it on Amazon or at 734coffee.com. And 80% of the revenue goes to refugee education. This is what he created. He came out here, took him to Rocky Ford, we showed him equipment, and now there's this brand extension called 734 Water. It is becoming the official water for South Sudan. We harvest the water there, it's purified. In that particular case, the configuration was in one of these buildings. A SIP spring, it's called, structural insulated panels. And inside the building is a fully functional water purification plant. And that building with the plant goes into a container, a 40-foot container. And then we ship the container to South Sudan. This is one of the configurations that we're doing. We pull the container out. Now you have a container for the water bottles, storage, and you have a fully functioning building. So you have a 2-building water plant that we put together when we're on the ground in a day and a half. That's the building being pulled out of the container. We also can go up bigger. So I'm running out of time, but basically all of this is connected by IoT, Internet of Things. We know the pressure of the gauges with transducers. We know the voltage. We know the amperage. And most importantly for these enterprises, we know how much water they're processing so we can reconcile that with how much money they're collecting. So this is really what we want to do. I do want to scoot really fast to something else. I'm going to get past here. The sale of water pays for power. So in 3 years, we want to be able to put this in after the water sales. And that will allow sewing shops and vertical farms and welding and food processing. That makes that possible once you have power. On the left is not from Nazi Germany. This is not from 1945. This is last week in Ukraine. And this insanity has got to stop. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to put 30 water purification plants around the border of Ukraine in these EU countries. So as people are fleeing, some may be going back when the crisis is over, but right now we're at about 2.5 million people have crossed these borders and they get no water. The water that they get, which is the way disaster is handled, is flats of single-use bottles. It's extraordinarily expensive and it's not sustainable. We want to put water plants on these border areas, and then eventually it would turn into enterprises. So once the crisis is over, we would provide them with these bottles, which basically is from a Colorado company. You'll see these in Natural Grocers if you ever go there. And these are 2.2-liter bottles. This whole project, to do all the equipment, all the installation, and all the bottles, about 100,000 bottles to start with, is about $3 million. We're starting to talk with USAID for this. And the CEO of Rotary, the General Secretary, Jon Kaufman, he's the guy that's there through every single one-year Rotary International president. He's the guy that runs it all. His home club is Kyiv. He's from Ukraine. So I wrote him a long letter yesterday. Please cross your fingers that he'll reply, or that he even saw it, or that it didn't go into junk. Seems like it wouldn't go into junk, but And so I want to have a conversation with him about this project. 30 water purification plants on the borders of Ukraine. This is the kind of thing that Rotary can do. Rotary needs to put a stamp on this. We can get the money from different sources, but together we can do it. And Colorado Springs is now the home club of H2OpenDoors. Thank you very much. We have a couple minutes for questions. Couple minutes for questions if anybody's got one. Yes?
How do you do training and maintenance for your operations?
The nice thing about this Rocky Ford equipment is that it only needs to be taken down once a month for full sanitation, for full disinfection, which is basically in that membrane housing. 60 minutes of that is putting in 400 milliliters of chlorine and letting it soak in a bath. Then it brings it back to factory specs. There's 4 or 5 other processes. We teach the tech team that's at that village.